Police officers of Reddit, what was your oh moment? Kid drowned at a local pool, so I had to tag along with the ambulances for an investigation. I got there first and saw his father holding him crying and my heart sank. I ran over there and tried to perform CPR to the best of my ability for about 10 minutes before the ambulance arrived. He woke up right as it pulled onto our street. I proceeded to visit him in the hospital and now he swears he wants to be a police officer. Ex-cop from NSW Australian here. A guy once died in a motorcycle accident. We went to deliver the death message to his girlfriend. After reading the collision report, the truck driver said he just pulled straight in front of him like a deliberate suicide. She was not answering, so we forced entry. The shelves of the fridge were on the kitchen floor. Opening the fridge, we discovered multiple pillowcases with her cut up body inside. That was certainly an SIO moment. Not me, but my grandpa was on the California Highway Patrol for 20 years. He always told the story of how he pulled over this guy for a busted taillight. My grandpa asks him for his license and registration. And the guy says, "How'd you catch me so fast?" Grandpa said the hair on the back of his neck never again stood up half so fast. Turned out the guy had robbed a bank not 5 minutes before. My older brother is a cop. He got a call about a suicidal teenager behind a school with a knife. He rolled up to the spot, and when the kid noticed him, he immediately started hacking at his own neck with the knife. My brother sprints over to him and tases him. Saved the kid's life. It's all on body cam, is eyeing wild. Edit. A few people have asked for a link of the video. I've only seen it one time. It's not public as far as I know. I pulled up on a teen sleeping in a vehicle at the end of a country road. When I ran the license plate, I found out that he was reported as a runaway. The doors on the vehicle were locked, so I knocked on the window to wake him up. Once he woke up and realized what was going on, he shot himself in the mouth with a rifle he had hidden under his blanket. Rough way to start my shift. We happened to be right on top of the scene when a carjacking with a gun call went out. I saw the car fishtailing in the snow half a block away. We started to chase, and the driver bailed immediately in the driveway of an apartment. I chased him up a hill while my partner ran around the building to cut him off. Just as I crested the hill, a shot rang out. He fired blindly behind him. The old "to whom it may concern" shot. We chased him through a church parking lot where the bingo game was just letting out, so no return fire. Caught him in a backyard behind the church. The department gave us nice plaques and cake. Was on a traffic stop. My sergeant came and backed me up due to having to possibly tow the vehicle. My sergeant's vehicle was behind mine and we were both in the right lane. My sergeant was sitting in his car and I exited my car to go talk to him. As I walked closer to his car, I heard a vehicle's engine rev all the way out, but I couldn't see it. For a split second I knew what was going to happen and but couldn't react fast enough. The vehicle I heard smashed into the back of my sergeant's SUV, which struck me, throwing me into the road. The driver was completely hammered and didn't have a license. This happened last Sunday and I have surgery in a couple weeks for my knee and my sergeant has a broken back. Former MP here. Partner and I were riding around when we saw another unit dip into a weapons storage area. Figured, hey, let's see what they're up to. Rolled up to the gate and the guard says, "You guys here for the bomb leak?" I'm sorry. What? We are now. Hit the gas and went rolling in to find the fire department and all they're investigating. Had to evacuate the entire weapons area. Most of the supply area across the street as well as most of the flight line. Something like a 3,000 meter cordon. That was a fun day. Ended up just being sealant for anyone interested in the outcome. Not me. But my friend is a cop. He pulled up to accident scene once involving a motorcycle. Gets out of his car. Starts walking over and sees the guy's helmet. Figures he'll be nice and bring it over to the guy. Well, as it turns out, the guy was still in the helmet. My mate had an oh moment on his first week of solo traffic patrols. My grandfather retired from the police force a few years ago. One of his stories really stuck out to me. He answered a call for backup, that there was a guy up in a tower shooting it with his rifle. When my grandpa arrived, the man shot at his squad car. The bullet entered the roof and hit just above his shoulder, right through the shoulder strap on his uniform. Not me, but my brother-in-law. He gets a call that there's been an accident at a dark intersection where a lot people speed through. Arrives and finds he's the first responder and it's a really bad collision. Finds a 6-month-old infant thrown 20+ feet from the car. Mother is dead. He gives CPR to the baby, but the injuries are too damaging. The baby dies in his arms. Till today he insists on car seats. Boosters for kids until they're big enough. I don't think he's ever gotten over that baby dying. Edit. Thanks for the silver. But most importantly, put your kids in car seats and boosters. Late to the party. But I will say not a cop but the victim who got to watch. I was a truck driver in my former life. Was involved in a suicide by truck incident where guy killed himself and his son. After a couple HRS, I was unhurt physically. I was in the back of a cruiser giving my statement. The MTO, for my American neighbors, rolled up at that time and got out and started taking pics of my 18-wheeler and started to do a truck inspection. The cop I was dealing with got out of his cruiser and proceeded to tear that inspector a new asshole. Basically, get the hell out of my crime scene. I thanked the cop and he said he didn't know if he could actually do that. But no way was he letting charge me with anything. We were looking for a guy who stole guns from his ex and found him under a pile of clothes in a closet at a different house. Unfortunately, there was like 7 kids sleeping in the same room, so I start getting them out of there while my partner cuffs the guy who is pretending to sleep. We decide to drag him out and I go to move the mattress to get it out of the way and we find the stolen guns under where the kids were sleeping. Was doing a welfare check at a house for a suicidal male. Only person living at the house. Car in driveway. And house was locked up. Gathered some more info and was told where a key was. Opened the door. Announced myself and starting searching the house expecting to find a dead body. Opened a closet door and the guy was hiding in there with a rifle next to him. If he wanted me dead I wouldn't be typing this. Dude was having some issues. Sat and talked for about half an hour. Told me he heard me but didn't want to talk to anyone. Got him the help he needed. Edit. Whoa. This is overwhelming. Thank you all for the responses and kind words of encouragement. I will do my best to slowly work through some of the questions I see. My husband has been a police officer for over 20 years. One night he was patrolling the downtown area when he noticed a purse someone had left behind. He opened the bag to check for ID and found a turd. Some lady took a big ass in her handbag and left it behind. He'll talk about autopsies and burnt bodies. But that is the one story he would rather forget. Edit. Thank you for the gold and silver. I'm so happy my husband's story made so many of you laugh. Not me. But a drill sergeant I had in basic training. On her first shift. Her first call was a mom who had gone crazy. She bit the penis off her 6-year-old and used it to choke and kill her baby. It was a total bloodbath. Edit. I don't know what happened to the penis or the mom. My DS told us this story as a "yeah, you're an MP. But you will see" crazy type of lesson to get us to pay attention, and it worked. Edit 2. It happened in Fort Hood. TX. Honestly, all I know about the story are what I posted above. My cousin was an EMT in Buffalo when he was backing up a SWAT insertion. As he tells it, the oh moment was when he realized the gunfire he was hearing wasn't from the police. As a rookie, I was responding to an alarm at restaurant that was supposed to be haunted by a woman. The first officer that arrived was an older officer that didn't do much and didn't ever get excited on the radio. As soon as he arrived, he asked for a second unit in a high-pitched tone. As I pulled in, he had his shotgun out and he was leaned up over his hood. My first thought was, oh, someone is breaking in. When I ran up to him and asked what up, all he said was, as he pulled up and his lights hit the building, a woman jumped off the roof and disappeared. He was clearly shook. Me and another officer checked the building and found no evidence that someone had been there. It made an impression on me and I never went back to the restaurant at night without another officer. My dad was a cop for about 19 years before what would be the first time he called me after a shift because he felt like out of my family I would be the only one would just listen. He got a call about a possible domestic violence out in the next county. And he was the closest unit. Short story. Crazy ass dad locked himself in the bathroom with his 7 and 3-year-old sons. Shot and killed both sons before killing himself. My dad got out of his car at the second shot and barely made it into the house at the third. He requested a transfer the next week. Not me but a guy I know. Very junior cop. He has been on the police force maybe 5 years now. On his very first call ever he responded to a suicide. When he arrived he found a 16-year-old teenage girl who had opted to end her life by slitting her own throat. First and foremost I can't imagine what brought the girl to do this. Extremely tragic. But I also can't fathom the mental strength required to be able to continue a career in the police force after kicking things off like that. Certainly demands respect for these individuals that serve. When I was responding to a simple trespass after warning call and upon me making contact with a trespassed individual, he charged myself and my zone partner with a pair of scissors. Not a cop, but an animal control officer. Got a call about a family dog that had been attacked an hour ago by something wild. Got there to find said family dog's skin rotting off with most of it gone and complete with maggots due to massive infection. Later found out it was from either chemical burn or boiling water poured on dog. 2 weeks ago. Dog was taken to ER and euthanized immediately due to only viable skin was skin on dog's head. Family still insisted it was a wild animal and it happened that night. I have no faith in humanity. When I was a trainee, we were waiting for a suspected car thief, as far as I know from the info we got from local police anyway. When he shows up and we get him stopped, we have officers approach from behind. Well, here I come with a shotgun and take up a position on the passenger side, thinking I'm being tactical by covering this angle. Well, instead of doing a textbook felony stop, which would involve taking a defensive position and ordering him to come to us with his hands up, these officers just approach the stolen vehicle from the driver's side and order him out at gunpoint. My own moment was when I realized I was downrange of all these pistols and rifles, essentially looking down their barrels. To this day, I don't know if I'm dumb for being the one guy on the passenger side, or if these officers are dumb for not doing a standard felony extraction. Luckily, the guy came quietly. I was cleaning out a drug tacker-back box by my office one time. It's a metal box where people throw their old prescriptions so we can dispose of them properly. Usually people throw all manner of mundane items, sunscreen, vitamins, etc. But you run into a few opioids. On this evening, I reached into the box and felt a prick on my finger, and saw an uncapped syringe. My heart dropped, and I went to the bathroom and started squeezing blood out of the pinprick. With shaky hands, I called my dispatch and asked them to send a paramedic to the office. The medic came and consulted with the on-call doctor before she told me the chance of contracting something was very slim. I took a closer look at the syringe and saw it was someone's testosterone supplement, and it had the patient's name as well as the VA hospital name. I called down to the hospital, and thankfully the guy had no communicable diseases. When I was a corrections officer, I got assigned to shadow an experienced officer until an FTO would be available to train me. It didn't take me long to find out that this CO was highly unpopular among the inmates. My moment was when we went into a 50-man dorm to do a roster bed check. And there was absolute silence in the dorm. And I could feel the hair standing on the back of my neck. The inmates were intently staring at the officer I was shadowing. He was oblivious to it, while I was straight up in fight or flight mode. Never experienced that in a dorm after that. I feel like something serious was potentially going to go down that night. 2 on 50 is not good odds. I couldn't have been happier when I didn't have to shadow that guy anymore. My husband got a call for a psychiatric emergency when working as an EMT. A kid on a four-wheeler saw a pickup crashed into a stone wall in a field and called the police. Who called EMS? Apparently the driver had driven into the wall intentionally and stabbed himself in the abdomen as well. And then bled to death or died of head injuries until someone found him. As my SO was leaning in to turn off the engine, the truck ran out of gas. That was the weirdest one he's told me. For unattended deaths in my town. Law enforcement is typically called in to make sure there's nothing suspicious going on before EMS coroner funeral home takeover. One day in the dead of summer, when it had been in the 90s for a full week, we got a call about an unattended death. We get there and go into the front door, and instantly we know by the smell that this guy has been here a while. And the AC is not running. It's easily 90 degrees downstairs. But he's upstairs. He is normally a pretty big guy. Stats from DMV said something like 350 pounds. If I remember correctly. But he was ballooned up from the heat and decomposition and reminded me of a grey violet Beauregard from Willy Wonka. As they're trying to get him into the body bag, the skin starts slipping. Juices start oozing. The smell gets exponentially worse. That's about the point my sergeant decided we could wait until after the body was loaded to go back in. The image of that guy literally falling apart in the EMT's hands is something that will never leave me. Actually, another one which is a bit creepy too. Wrote a guy a DUI one night. Towed his car and seized his license. Serving him with the form from the DMV which says that his license has been seized and that he has to show up to a hearing to determine whether the license will be suspended. Like any good form, the DMV form has boxes where I fill out this guy's information and carbon copies so I can keep a copy with the report. A few days later a buddy of mine finds me. He got dispatched to a call of a suicide in the park. Man was found hanging from a tree. They identified him by the DMV form I had served him with, which was still in his pocket. Nothing makes you go oh more than stopping an obvious drunk. Feeling like you could be stopping a homicide in progress. To realizing you know the person. Maybe you know them really well. I was a cop for 2 years in Singapore. I wanted action and adventure. Singapore being one of the safest countries in the world. I arrested no one. Oh. I'm not an officer, but my friend's dad was. He got a call that there was a suicide at a residence and he didn't find out until he drove over that it was the guy's daughter's 5th birthday. He got drunk with the other dads and they decided to play Russian roulette with a 1911. For those unaware, a 1911 is a semi-automatic pistol with a standard single stack magazine. You need a revolver with a rotating cylinder to play Russian roulette, because there is a 1/6 chance of getting shot if you only load one round into a revolver. I was running a road crew cleanup one day, and I had 8 state inmates, and one of them picks up a loaded .38 and starts walking back towards the van. I see the gun in his hand and say, oh, they fixing to shoot my ass. I made a cell phone call and left it on speaker and told the inmate to place it on the ground and back up. He said, boss, I ain't gonna shoot ya. You too good to all of us. And he handed me the gun. We all loaded up and went back to the prison. I'm retired from the state of Florida Depth of Corrections. Just goes to show. Treat people with respect and kindness, and they won't point a loaded .38 at you. Former paramedic here. I responded to a crash on the highway that required extrication of the driver. I hop in the backseat and hold C-spine as fire starts taking off the door, cutting posts, etc. The driver starts asking where Molly and Fred are, and if they're okay. I'm confused because she was the only occupant of the car. I ask her if she's talking about the other car and she says no. They're my pet tarantula and snake. I look in the floorboard and there are the remains of 2 terrariums, but no Molly or Fred. My cousin is an RCMP officer. His first posting was in a northern Saskatchewan community near the Northwest Territories. His first call was for a domestic dispute. The moment happened when they pulled up to the house. The door was open and there was blood everywhere. They entered the house to find two men arguing over a deer they killed and who would get the bigger half. Not my own story. But I used to work with a guy who was in the police but hit burnout after seeing a lot of and jumped careers. He told me a story where he got a call about an apparent dead body in the underground. Some teenage girl had dead on the train. But because she was propped up in her seat, nobody noticed she was dead. She's been riding around the train's route for hours and, because of how impersonal we are as a society, nobody even looked in her direction and noticed she was quite clearly dead. He saw the security camera footage from the train and described it as like something out of a horror movie. Playing through the footage and seeing people coming on and coming off the train in fast forward, winking in and out of the shot, while she just sat there, completely motionless. As the clock zoomed through hours of video. And nobody realizing they were sharing the carriage with a corpse. I've only heard a few stories from my dad. He's been a police officer for 27 years now. And there's two that I can distinctly remember. Trigger warning. Child death and suicide. 1. Finding newborn twins in a dumpster outside of a restaurant. Don't recall if they were still alive or not. 2. Get called to a woman standing on the edge of a building. Dad and partner get to the roof to try to talk to her but she jumps off when she sees them. Not long after they find that she had thrown her 2 kids off. Unfortunately, they did not make it. I was watching over a guy at the hospital and all of a sudden it looks like he was fingering his asshole. He then proceeds to jack off. My partner and I go in with nurses and we tell the guy to show us his hands. He pulls out one hand and it was fine. We tell him to bring out the other hand slowly and it was just covered in. The nurses get him cleaned up and maybe half an hour later he starts doing it again. This time we somewhat stop him in time. I asked him if he needed to go to the bathroom, to which he nodded. I retrieved a nurse and they started walking to the bathroom. This man held his finger in his butthole the whole way to the bathroom, but that wasn't enough of a plug, so he started dropping little Hershey kisses of poops. It was later decided that he needed to go to a mental facility. P.S. He had told us he had gotten rid of a gun earlier, so that then sent a couple of our guys on a wild goose chase to find it, which they did. Paramedic here. Not an officer. But I probably know this one officer's moment. Went on a psychiatric call out in the rural area of our zone. Ended up being a hanging. Super eerie vibe. It was dusk out. Cool fall breeze. Remote house with a single tree in front of it and nothing around for miles. House had a very long, very steep driveway. As you drive up, you see the silhouette of a man hanging from the tree. Looked like Halloween decoration. I was first on scene and advised our dispatch of what I had. We use separate dispatches from the sheriff's department. And he hadn't received the update yet. He rolls up and quite literally says, "Jesus, I'm Christ." Rookie deputy. He's actually a good friend of mine. One of the things I would never, ever recommend one to see in person. So surreal. Lifeless body just swaying in the wind. It was actually before I was sworn in. Still as a cadet in the highway patrol. Loading live rounds into my service revolver for the first time. Like, these could kill someone. 40% of these answers are going to be when I was reported for domestic violence.